Way back in 2015, David Coon, the leader of the Greens, tabled a bill called the Local Food Security Act. Liberal government was in power. The act, what it laid out, among other things, was that on food contracts that the provincial government has with institutions like schools and nursing homes and hospitals and prisons, things like that, that local food producers would be given preference, would be given priority, that those institutions would go to local farmers for fruits and vegetables and produce, at the very least, to supply the food for those institutions. Seems very reasonable. The province has to go to some food supplier anyway and spend millions of dollars on food. Why not make sure that that goes to our local farmers? So David Coon tabled that bill, the Local Food Securities Act. The Farmers Union, the National Farmers Union, the NFU, was very supportive. Some of them were in the local legislature when that bill went forward, and it was voted down by the Liberal government, who just said, that's not a priority. Now, you could say, oh, well, the bill was flawed, more work needed to be done. And of course, David Coon's response was, yes, a bill comes to first reading, then it is brought to committee where you bring in the public, you bring in expert groups, and you work on a bill together. That is how legislation happens. But this was just shot down immediately, given no chance to succeed or go to committee or go on to the next step. I bring this up in today's Live for Five because, and hold that thought, yes, I look a little bit sunblasted and I was door knocking today. If you're watching this live, today is scorching hot outside. It is July 17th, north of 30 degrees. And I was out there talking with folks like Stephen, who, when he looked at my 5 priorities, when I handed him this little door hanger and said, there's 5 things that I think are a priority, he zeroed in on number 4 and said, I'm a single person, I'm a senior, I work when I can, but when I go to stupid store, he called it, instead of superstore, which, hey, we can probably all relate to, he said the cost of food is absolutely prohibitive. It is very difficult for me. And I want to keep going back to the history of how the Greens, and like everything else in my 5 solutions and 5 priorities, my targets, as I'm calling them in this video, in this series of videos, they have all been coming. They're not surprising us. So this is an example of how in 2015, David Coon called for a local food security act, and it was rejected. Now, in 2020, Kevin Arsenault, who is a current Green MLA as well, he tabled the bill a third time, and hoping a third time is a charm. And he said something very interesting in 2020 as a farmer himself. He said, if we do not take action and respect local farmers, give them the help they need, and also free up food supply chains, we are going to see massive costs in food pricing, and that is going to create a whole cascading burden on people who are responsible for food security. Agencies, nonprofits, charities that out of the goodness of their hearts are trying to fill those gaps. So Kevin tabled that bill once again called the Local Food Security Act, and it has just sat there ignored by the government. It is now 2024. It has not gone anywhere. Now, Kevin has since stood up and called for motions involving food security. I don't know what it is. We eat multiple times a day. It just seems like one of those things that is not sexy or something. I mean, where we talk about healthcare or homeless shelters or the RCMP or needing a courthouse. Those are all the 5 things. But I added the 4th one as a major priority for Saint Croix because we eat multiple times a day. I'm going to doors. I'm hearing people talk about the cost of food. As I mentioned yesterday, inflation is a serious issue everywhere. And yet, So much more can be done for our farmers, with our farmers, in support, supported by, and with the support of the provincial government, the Department of Agriculture. And I love how Kevin Arsenault talks about how we need to call that department not just agriculture and aquaculture, but the word food needs to be in there as well. There is an economy to those things, but as I said, food, do we take it for granted? Not when the prices skyrocket, right? And so we've had these bills tabled by Greens, of all people, which is once again why I'm so proud to be a part of the Green Party, because they have been ringing the bell on food insecurity, needing to take action, literally tabling bills, and the current legacy governments, the big parties, the Liberals, Conservatives, just continue to quietly deem it not important. Well, when you go to the superstore, stupid store, as Stephen called it, no offense, superstore, but that is the sentiment out there. When you go and hear people calling names to the supermarket, the only one that we have in St. Stephen, there is it has reached a point of crisis for a lot of people. And you don't need to look any further than the food bank to see the stress that they are feeling on people who can't afford food. And so just wanted to bring to your attention again why this is one of my 4 solutions for Saint Croix, right where we live. But now I want to pivot tomorrow, part 3, to talking about local farms and things that are being done in our communities to mitigate the strain and the fact that we only produce 9% of the fruits and vegetables that we consume. So 91% of the fruits and vegetables that we eat as New Brunswickers is imported from elsewhere. That can change with some smart policy and maybe listening to the Greens who've been saying we got a problem. Let's fix it. More on that tomorrow. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Follow this YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're watching on Facebook, leave a comment or